Hello and welcome to the Random Wrestling Review, another episode of our local to global series, as we are now in June of 2000 and with a big show on its way in just a few days, full circle. We have indeed come full circle for this show, and we're going to be putting that show on in just a moment. In fact, we're going to proceed right away to the next player-controlled show, and we're going to head straight into things here because I'm going to look at the rankings first of all. And this is where we are. Dave Batista, of course, the new champion after a flurry of activity at the last event. Absolute chaos in where we had the title change hands twice. And that's why you can see at the bottom here, Dan Severn and Ace Steel are both on 0 points because Ace Steel defeated Dan Severn in the opening match of the Lottery Brawl. That was after Dave Batista was apparently taken out by somebody backstage and was unable to compete. Ace Steel won the championship, and then after that, the Lottery Brawl took place, and Kimo took his victory in that, which gave him 5 points, which moved him up to 8 points in total, and as the number one contender, or at least joint number one contender with Charlie Haas. And then after that, with the Rebellion celebrating both Ace Steel's victory and Kimo's victory, out came Bruce Hart to announce that Dave Batista had recovered somewhat in the hour since the opening match and was now ready for a title match. And seeing as he'd been promised that title match at this show, he was going to get it right away. And he then defeated Ace Steel in the main event. And that's where the rankings are left. So to the main event of Full Circle will be Dave Batista versus Kimo. And I'm going to go into a little bit of detail around that in terms of the background to it, because this is something that I'm really quite excited by, actually. I feel really pleased with the amount of history that's gone into the kind of the war, or the history that's gone into or led up to this show without perhaps people being fully aware of it, and indeed even myself not being fully aware of it. Let's just have a look at some of the news here. In particular, WCW hire Brad Armstrong. So that's the kind of level of talent WCW are currently bringing in. Not that Brad Armstrong's a bad wrestler at all, but just not in terms of a star power, and in 2000 either. WWC Masters of Pain 2000 took place, where Dean Malenko and Stevie Ray defeated Mr. Ass and Heavy Metal in the main event tag team match. Buddy Landell and Alex Wright defeated the Contraband Crew, which is Don Callis and Silver King, somehow. Okay. Honky Tonk Man defeated Goldberg to retain the Puerto Rico heavyweight title. Kurt Angle defeated Sean Morley, Rocky Maivia, and Reggie B. Fine for the WWC television title. Some big names in their roster. I just thought I'd have a look at that as well. So yeah, Monday week 2, it's time for our next show. There's no need to hire anybody new, so we're going to go straight into it. And we've got a bunch of matches here. So let's start with the opener. It's going to be Shawn Stasiak against Rex. No, it's not. Against Keith Hart. Sorry. Shawn Stasiak against Keith Hart. This one's going to be won by Stasiak, unsurprisingly. We're going to work the crowd. It's going to be an open match and a pinfall victory for Stasiak. Keith Hart he's got to the point where now he can't go. He can hardly go at all. But that's fine. I don't have any major plans left for Keith Hart, I don't think. But we'll see. I'm not ruling him out of being in my plans for the future at any point, but certainly for now, there's nothing immediate that comes to mind. Rex King will face Teddy Hart. Now, this is a rematch. You will remember these two had a match. They've had a lot of matches actually on the independents, interestingly, but they had a match at Vendetta back in January where Teddy Hart got the surprise victory thanks to Billy Kidman. Well, this is kind of like the rematch, and we're going to make it even shorter than the previous match, and Rex King's going to win by pinfall with a tainted win as well, though I think it's nice to do that for Rex King, that's kind of his thing. So then we're going to have the first angle of this night, and it's going to start with Ace Steel coming out. He's going to be talking about Bruce Hart. He's going to be talking about Dave Batista. And he's going to say that he suffered the biggest miscarriage of justice in wrestling history at the Lottery Brawl, and that he is going to take this to the highest court in the land. He cannot believe what happened at the Lottery Brawl. He says that he had nothing to do with Dave Batista's attack. He said he had no part in it, and yet he was being punished for the fact that that had happened to Dave Batista. He said that it was unfair because he had completely warmed down after the title match, of which he put every effort into, and then was expected to just suddenly be ready for a match with a guy that had been able to warm up backstage for the previous 25 minutes or so, or however long it was before that he'd stopped being injured enough to eventually take his place in the match. So very angry Ace Steel in this opening, in this angle. So you got Ace Steel, Ekmo, and Barry Buchanan. They're going to be up against Charlie Haas, C.W. Anderson, and Eric Young in a six-man tag match. A six-man tag match which will be won by, I think we're going to go with Barry Buchanan. The loser is going to be, unsurprisingly, Eric Young. Pinfall victory, and that is that match in there as well. Then after the match, with the Rebellion having secured victory, out comes Dan Severn, and he goes after all three members of the Rebellion that are there. Runs to ring. Dan Severn runs to the ring, and the Rebellion run into the crowd. Severn says the Rebellion are finished. Very brief. In fact, we'll give him an entertainment thing here rather than the fighting things. It doesn't actually fight anybody. In fact, we're going to make that quite short as well. Make it 3 minutes. In fact, that requires us to make some changes to the story. So we've still got Stasiak in this one. We're going to end this storyline because ultimately, I think that was only set up really. That story was only set up really to have for when Stasiak fought Dan Severn for the title. But we're going to have Sean Stasiak added to this story now. And then also that the Rebellion implodes here. We're going to add worker to this, which is Dan Severn. So obviously Dan Severn was cheated, you could say, out of the Northwest title by Ace Steel in the first place because Barry Buchanan helped him win that belt off Severn. So Severn is now going after the Rebellion. The next match on the show is another tag match, actually. It's the Mavericks, James Storm and Chris Harris, and they're up against Buddy Wayne and Billy Kidman in their latest tag team match. I'm going to make this one go 12 minutes, and we're going to have James Storm the winner, defeating Billy Kidman, and that will be 2 major victories now for the Mavericks since Chris Harris came into the company. Remember, James Storm's contract, in the storyline at least, only runs till the end of July, and he is trying to find a way of forcing the Random Wrestling Review's management to keep him in the company, and his latest scheme is to try and win the tag team belts along with Chris Harris. After this, we then have the main event, which is going to be, for the title, of course, Dave Batista versus Kimo. Now, I wanted to talk about this a little bit before I book it, before I start running the show, because this is a match that really made me happy when I started when I booked it after. So I had the Lottery Brawl idea in my mind. So then when I planned out what we were going to do on the show, and when I say planned out, I mean literally before I booked it. Hang on, just let me finish this. Kimo's furious. Keep strong. Hopefully he won't be furious if I do that. Still furious. What if I protect him as well? It's not good going for Kimo here. Okay, well that might bring down the quality of the match maybe, but we'll see. I also need to do a storytelling match. I think we'll go with that one. To make that storytelling. Okay, before I go into the whole Batista Kimo thing, I'm going to also add the the final bits of the show. So after the match, Kimo is helped to the back by ECMO and by Barry Buchanan. But Dan Severn is again going to come out and go after them. Apologies for I've got a little bit of a frog in my throat today, so that might be a bit of an issue as we go through. We'll do that star quality. Let's see what happens there. So it's a similar thing to what happened after the 6-man tag match earlier. Basically, as Kimo is being helped out, Dan Severn runs in and the Rebellion flee. So once more, Dan Severn's gone after the Rebellion and they've all kind of cleared the way. Batista's left in the ring, after which there is another angle, which is this time Dave Batista confronted by and attacked by Mark Henry and Sean Stasiak. And these two are the real enemies. Batista's the enemy that they really want for these two. They don't care so much about Dan Severn. He just got in the way a little bit just recently. This is the guy that they want. So they're just going to attack him and leave him lying in the ring to end the show. That's how it's going to be. We're not going to be penalised by that. A booking analysis is fine. Okay, so we're ready to go. So yeah, Dave Batista versus Kimo. So I started talking about this about twice already on this show, on this episode, and I was talking a little bit. I was sort of edging towards talking about it on the last episode. But what I want to talk about here is Dave Batista versus Kimo. So after I had planned out what was going to take place at the Lottery Brawl, I was starting to think about, okay, what will be the main event of the next show? And I looked at the rankings. I was like, well, now we've got Kimo winning. Well, actually, Kimo winning the Lottery Brawl was part of my plans there. I was like, okay, who could face Batista first? Who's a heel? Kimo's in a good spot. We can give him the victory. So that's why Kimo won, effectively, to set up this match. But then once I'd set up the match in my head, at least, I thought, well, let me have a look and see how many times these two have wrestled each other, because they must have wrestled each other a bunch of times. And then my mind got started thinking about their shared history. And so I thought, actually, this is such a great example of how there's so much now rich history for this promotion. You see, I've gone to the rankings. That's because I want to show you this slide here. So this is the backstory, really, of this match without it having actually been conscious. So Dave Batista replaced Kimo as bodyguard of Michael Modest in March 97. You'll remember Michael Modest, or if you've been watching the series since this point, Michael Modest had Kimo as a bodyguard. They then had a falling out. They went into a feud, and then Dave Batista was the new bodyguard that Michael Modest brought in to replace Kimo. And then they had a match. Kimo and Michael Modest had a match. They had a couple of matches, but the final match was a loser leaves RWR match, which Modest won when Dave Batista helped him win. So it was Dave Batista ultimately who cost Kimo his place in the Random Wrestling Review for nearly 2 years. Obviously, Kimo returned in December of 1998, but then the pair have only had one singles match against each other since that point, and it just happened to be a time limit draw at Something to Prove in June of 99, so 1 year in game time before. So this feud effectively, or the history between these guys at least, dates all the way back to March 1997, over 3 years in game history between Batista and Kimo. And I just thought, you know, if there was some way if this promotion existed in reality, if there was some way for us to present that backstory and tell that story to our fan base, then absolutely I'd be all over it, because I just feel this is such a great series of coincidences that have arrived at this point. At no point did I plan long term to have Batista and Kimo face each other here. At no point did I plan for Kimo to be the #1 contender by the time Batista won the title. Hell, I didn't even know Batista would win the title at Lottery Brawl until, about 1 or 2 shows before we got there. So there was no planning for this, but this is now Batista's first title match, a match that effectively, in my mind, originally was reasonably trivial, not really that important. But it was only when I then dug into the history between them, and I was like, they've got so much shared history, and they've literally only had one singles match, and it was a time limit draw. And it just feels like you would, if you were running this as a TV product, you'd be making sure that there was a really cool VT package that made it very clear the history between Batista and Kimo at the start of this show. As it is, all I'm left with is a small, slide of stuff that I can of sentences that I can sort of show you the history. But I was just really pleased with it. And I think it really talks to, as I said, the rich history now that the Random Wrestling Review's got. It also really kind of once again reinforces my belief that this ranking system that we've got, where you effectively accrue points by getting victories, and then you lose your points once you get a title shot. If you lose that match, you then lose your points. It really reinforced for me that that's a really effective system, because it gives you these matches that are for the title that perhaps you wouldn't even ever see happen. Like, I remember we talking about the fact that, was it Charlie Haas or CW Anderson or someone got a title shot, you know 9 months ago or something, in game time, and they never would in like in any other promotion. They wouldn't do it because it just wouldn't be considered a high enough high enough star power wrestler to get a title shot. But of course, in our world where these rankings exist, it didn't matter. CW Anderson had accrued over the course of 3 years enough wins to finally be in a position to be number one contender, and so it just worked really, really well. And I think um, this is another example of where it works really well, where basically you don't have rematches all the time for the big titles because you can't. That's sort of built into the ranking system, is that rematches in general don't tend to happen, at least for the main event matches. So, for the title, for example, if you lose your match going for the title, you drop to the bottom of the rankings. You won't see the top of the rankings for at least another 9 months. Like, it took Batista a year to get back to being number one contender. So, and same for Ace Steel. So, I just a note on that stuff. I was just really pleased with it. It kind of drove me on to be like, I want to continue this for a very long time yet. Now we've gone on that really long tangent, that really long kind of side quest there. Let's get into this show, RWR Full Circle. And it's 128 people in the house. I think that's a new record paid attendance for the company. We'll check that after the show. It begins with Sean Stasiak defeating Keith Hart in 8 minutes and 11 seconds by pinfall. Stasiak here, excellent, 41 in-ring performance from him. Keith Hart 25, though he was visibly tiring towards the end. A segment rating of 39. A very decent start to this show indeed. Then Rex King versus Teddy Hart, and Rex King getting the victory, illegally using the ropes for leverage in 7 minutes and 9 seconds. Rex King was a 40 in-ring performance. Teddy Hart, though, a 32. He's getting better all the time. Sort of, he's the opposite of Keith Hart in some ways. Keith Hart's on his way out. Teddy Hart's just really starting to get himself going. Segment rating of 40 is an excellent match here, so well done to both of these as well. Then we've got Ace Steel coming out and kind of cutting that promo. Now, we're finding this with Ace Steel. He's a bit inconsistent when it comes to his promos, and we keep being told he needs to be scripted. So I will try and make sure that's the case next time. Whatever the case here, Ace Steel says that he suffered the biggest miscarriage of justice in wrestling history at the Lottery Brawl. He said he won the Random Wrestling Review Northwest title finally when he was given the chance to in a one-on-one encounter with Dan Severn. He says he had nothing to do with the attack on Dave Batista. He doesn't know anything about that. But then he is punished for that attack on Batista because after he'd warmed down from his match, got himself into a place where he was no longer expecting a match, where he was relaxed and ready to enjoy the evening. He'd even had a beer before, he says, the title match at the end of the night. Bruce Hart springs a surprise title match on him, and Dave Batista can come out having been given the chance to warm up properly before it and beat him in a match. He says it's the biggest miscarriage of justice in wrestling history. He's taking it to the highest court in the land, and he will not rest until that title is back around his waist. So segment rating here of 28, as we said, he's still a little bit inconsistent with his talking segments. This was followed by a really good six-man tag match. Ace Steel, Ekmo, and Barry Buchanan defeating Eric Young and Red Alert in 10:55, with Buchanan beating Young with an axe kick. Charlie Haas was the best wrestler in the ring, 46 rated in-ring performance. Excellent stuff from him. Also pretty good stuff from Ace Steel. CW Anderson's getting better again. Barry Buchanan. Ekmo seems to be going backwards, and Eric Young at a 21, but that's fine. He's never been portrayed as anything important. I will confess that I don't exactly know how this is going to happen, or exactly what is going to happen, but there's something big coming from the rebellion that will either decimate the rebellion or just straight up have it reconfigured significantly. But I am looking at ECMO, and I am even looking at Barry Buchanan as people that might be surplus to requirements. They've both been around for a long time. I think Barry Buchanan has had something like nearly 40 matches. ECMO has even more than that, I think. And they've just been around a long time, and I don't have huge plans for them going forward. Anyway, this was a segment rating of 41, a really good six-man tag match. Then after the match, Dan Severn ran to the ring as the Rebellion are celebrating their victory. They run into the crowd, fearful of Severn's redemption from the Lottery Brawl. Severn then briefly grabs the microphone and tells the Rebellion that they are finished. So segment rating here of 29. Dan Severn, unsurprisingly, very poor when trying to improvise dialogue. So again, need to remember to script him. But a decent, a decent match here that continues. Sorry, decent match. An okay segment, perhaps, though unsurprising given Severn's limitations on the mic. So then we had the tag team match, which saw the Mavericks defeat Buddy Wayne and Billy Kidman in 11:32 when James Storm pinned Billy Kidman. In this one, James Storm 43, Buddy Wayne 41, both really good at the moment in the ring. Chris Harris at 33, so he's getting a little bit better, and Billy Kidman's still on 30s, although we have not giving him much to do as of late, so something to think about there for him. But a segment rating of 43, so another match that went a little bit better than the previous ones. Is that trend going to continue for the main event for the title? It does not, unfortunately, and I think this has got a lot to do with the fact that we had to really protect Kimo in this. Also, Batista's performance wasn't great, and Kimo wasn't generally that enthusiastic about doing the job. So I'm really disappointed with this, actually. A 14-minute 57 match won by Batista by pinfall. He makes defense number 1 of the RWR Northwest title in a match that rated 37. Yeah, Batista has had 40 rated performances, but in the last couple of months, just as we were building up to him winning the title, he's dropped off a little bit. Hopefully that will change now with him holding the belt again. Kimo was a 41, which is lower than he would normally get as well. So as I said, I think that reflects his lack of enthusiasm for doing the job on this occasion. And that is the end of. No, it's not the end of the show because we've got some angles, obviously. The first one is Dan Severn coming out as Kimo is being helped out to the back by ECMO and Barry Buchanan. Dan Severn runs in and the Rebellion flee. Dan Severn then runs after them for a segment rating here of 30. And then finally, as Dave Batista's left in the ring celebrating with the fans, out come Mark Henry and Sean Stasiak. They attack Batista and leave him lying as they hold their arms aloft for the second time in recent months. Batista is down, and this pairing of Henry and Stasiak have beaten him up. Segment rating of 44, a very good segment to end the show, and that really is the end of this current event. So an overall rating of 39, very good final angle, and in the main, great in-ring action with the exception of that main event. In fact, the main event was the worst match of the night, which is really disappointing. Batista needs to pick up again, I think, ultimately after looking like someone who was absolutely capable of being a the top guy again. He's just not. He's just falling short of it at the moment a little bit, which is really disappointing. But in general, really good stuff. Charlie Haas compliment on a good performance. Again, I think that might even have been his best ever performance for the company. I'm going to give Buddy Wayne a compliment, and I'm going to give Rex King a compliment as well. So, another show, another event in the books. We are just 3 events now away from the Super Summer Tag Team Extravaganza, which will be a big kind of focus of what's to come. In terms of our next event, I don't know what it's going to be called. I know kind of what's going to happen, actually. I just don't know what it's going to be called. It might be a suggest a name situation here, I think. Full Force? Do I... I'm going to just keep Full Force. I think that's fine. I'm not looking for anything groundbreaking for this one. It does feel like because of the fact that we've not got any annual competition in June, and because we've just come off the Lottery Brawl and the Super Summer Tag Team Extravaganza is not far away, it does feel a little bit like we are, I don't know, in a what you might call a lull, like WWE tend to go through in the autumn, for example. I don't think it is a lull creatively or in terms of the matches we'll offer, but it feels that way just because of the fact that we don't have anything kind of major in terms of shows necessarily. But let's just look at where that all stood in the top 100. So the show itself, Full Circle, was the 13th best in company history down here. In terms of matches, though, some of them are going to be quite high. So we had the Mavericks defeat Buddy Wayne and Billy Kim, and that's 13th best match all time. We also had, actually, these didn't make it on here. The Rebellion versus Eric Young and Red Alert was 22nd best match all time. And then there was the singles match, which saw somebody and somebody that are not here yet. Rex King defeat Teddy Hart. They are 40th all time. So not bad. There was some good stuff in it. And as I said, Dave Batista, first defense of the Northwest title. Prestige is still at 33. It's not dropping thanks to Batista coming in or anything. But yeah, he'll need to. I think he needs to get better. We've got some stuff in the pipeline for him planned, so we'll see how that goes. Now we've got the event in, and I don't think I'm using anybody new again on this show, this next one, which I have again planned before this episode, just in case we have the time to do it. I think we will head towards it, but obviously we won't have the time now to book it. So this just gives me a little bit of time really to say thank you for watching today. And if you have enjoyed it, then please hit the like button to show your appreciation. Let us know if you've got any thoughts about the series, about where we're heading, about where we've gone, like about what happened in the past. Let us know if you've been enjoying the series. Let us know if you've got any particular favorites as part of the roster, who you're rooting for potentially, even though obviously you're only seeing them via TEW. And also, if you want to continue to follow along with the series, then hit the subscribe button and continue to enjoy this series for as long as it goes. And I'm hoping, as I've said many times, that this goes on for a very long time. I still have not running out of enthusiasm or creative ideas for it. So, with a bit of luck, we will be going well into the future of this game world and bring you as much as we can. I've got some ideas for longer term as well, actually, for the promotion, but they are just at the idea stage. I'm continuing not to plan very far ahead at all. In fact, I know what's going to happen on the next event, but after that, I've literally got no clue what's next. I haven't considered or thought about what will take place after the next event. So, I'm keeping that element of suspense even with myself, which actually helps the enjoyment of the creative process. But also, it's necessary because of the fact that we've got these rankings, right? Yeah, I don't know who's going to be the number one contender in 2 or 3 events time because everything changes so quickly. So, we'll see how that goes in in our next show and onwards going forward, of course. So, yeah, next we've got the, what do we call it? Full Force in the end is going to be the name of the show. And the main event, I'm actually going to have to reconfigure because I made a mistake. Or I say I made a mistake. I I did make a mistake. I planned incorrectly for the last show. I just was looking at the rankings then thinking, actually, that's not what I expected to see, even though that was from before the last show. So I actually have to mix up what I was going to do for this event, which is frustrating. But as I said, sometimes it just happens. Um, but we're going to leave it there for this episode because we haven't got much. I've got to reconfigure the the event that we've got next coming, but I also need to um, just I haven't really got the time to do that right now. So that's the kind of situation we're in. Just look at the finances very quickly before we go. So we're doing much better. You can see this month we've got another event to run, which means we will lose some money, but we'll also get some more ticket sales in. I'm expecting us to be losing around about this amount, but a bit less. If we can lose, let's say, 800 flat in June, then I will consider us to be on the right track to avoid any kind of financial difficulties in the future. You can actually see that since September of last year, we've only made a profit 1 month of that time. So it's been a long time we've been losing money, but at the same time, like we built up enough reserve to be able to do that, and I think we're going to start seeing a reversal of this trend of quite a lot of money being lost down to a lower level. in the next couple of months. But as I say, that is the end of today's episode. Thank you very much for joining me, and I'll catch you next time.